Good morning. Happy Mother's Day. We've said it lots of times, but I know most of us have had, I call them different moms. I've had probably more than most, but had my mom that raised me, adopted me, mom and dad. I had my mother-in-law, which, kind of goes with the deal. So she was good. She was always good to me. In fact, it was always funny that every time we came to visit or whatever for back, she always asked me what I wanted to eat, never the daughter. So, so I got to have some pretty cool stuff. So, and then at age 40-ish or whatever it was, I got to, and that's a whole nother story, but I got to meet my biological mom, and that's been a good relationship. We've had her name's Gail, and she lives up in north of Kansas City, and I talked to her this morning, in fact, so everything's going good there. Then the whole moms that we all have, I call them the village moms, the ones that are always looking out or reprimanding you when your regular mom's not there, but we've all had those, and whether they were school chums or moms or from church or something, we've always had those as well. But so yeah, there's lots of moms in our lives. We're going to look at a few this morning that I picked out, and I think I was telling Rick, knowing 40 minutes before you to preach is better than knowing a week in advance, because then it's just like. It's like you go over it, and then you're like, well, maybe I should do this, or maybe you should do this, and I don't know that it. So hopefully this will be somewhat coherent. Probably won't, but the first one we're going to look at, and I don't know why this lady jumped into my mind. She wasn't necessarily extraordinary in the Bible, but it's the widow of, we don't even know her name, the widow of Zarephath. So, and this is a story there in 1 Kings 17. We're going to start at verse 10 and following. And this is Elijah. Elijah's the telling this, or the active participant here. Elijah, so he rose and went to Zarephath, and when he came to the gate of the city, behold, a widow was there gathering sticks. And he called to her and said, bring me a little water in a vessel that I may drink. And as she was going to bring it, he called her and said, bring me a morsel of bread in your hand. And she said, as the Lord your God lives, I have nothing baked, only a handful of flour in a jar and a little oil in a jug. And now I'm gathering a couple of sticks that I may go in and prepare it for myself and my son, that we may eat it and die. And Elijah said to her, do not fear. Go and do as you have said. But first make me a little cake of it and bring it to me, and afterwards something for yourself and your son. For thus saith the Lord, the God of Israel, the jar of flour shall not be spent, and the jug of oil shall not be empty, until the day that the Lord sends rain upon the earth. And she went and did as Elijah said, and he and her household ate for many days. The jar of flour was not spent, neither did the jug of oil became empty, according to the word of the Lord that he spoke by Elijah. And I don't know what made me think of that. And you put her in a situation there. I don't know if she really knew who he was, or if she really had that much faith, but something within her allowed her to comply with that. I don't know, being in that situation there, a widow, where in that day and time your income is solely there probably from your spouse, the male figure. Not having that individual there, and not having the governmental system that we have nowadays, you're relying on other people to help you, or family or something like that. And then she's got a small child also, and basically it was looking very, very bleak. Why she complied with that is, I can only come to think that she is some faith that she's had there, maybe some teaching, some different things that she's had in her life, because she's feeling incredible despair at this point, and down to the very, very last of the meals that she has available to her. faith, servant's heart. You don't always know exactly the way she was brought up and the religious background. But then I think of, a lot of stories in the Bible that we look at. We don't really sit back and kind of take that perspective of that child in that situation there and how that child is observing a lot of times, and going back to, I don't remember necessarily life lessons that mom told me about. I think it was just the way she lived, and we can all probably speak to that. So, and I can't imagine that young person as growing up, and I'm sure the stories that were told till he was so tired of hearing them about that situation and what went on there. The next one I want to talk about is Lois and Eunice. Now, this was the grandmother and mother to Timothy. Now, we don't know a lot about them, but from what Paul kind of elaborates on a little bit, his upbringing and his instruction was phenomenal. In 2 Timothy 1 verse 5, Paul says to Timothy, "I am reminded of your sincere faith, which first lived in your grandmother Lois and in your mother Eunice, and I'm persuaded now lives in you also." If you simply just follow what was written here, it would imply that the grandmother was the one of faith there, and then she was able to bring that faith to Eunice, the daughter, and then on both of them, I'm sure, on to Timothy. And so I'm sure he, like any teenage boys and things like that, necessarily aren't always receptive to everything that your parents are trying to teach you, but roundabout way it stuck with them. And then of course we know. That he went with Paul and Silas, but even Paul back in a little bit earlier in 1 Timothy 1 verse 2, he refers to him as my son in the faith. You just have to think that you just don't get to that level without the instruction behind you, and I'm sure we could all speak to that. We've known kids, I always said the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree, so good or bad. And so, you look at that and you just think of all the things that Timothy was able to do after that point, as a young man, and the travels that he got to, have with Paul and Silas. The next one was Jochebed, the mother of Moses. Exodus 2, verses 1 through 4. Now a man of the tribe of Levi married a Levite woman, and she became pregnant and gave birth to a son. And when she saw that it was with a fine child, she hid him for 3 months. But when she could hide him no more, she got a papyrus basket for him, and coated with pitch and tar, and she placed the child in it and put it among the reeds along the bank of the Nile. His sister stood in distance and watched what would happen to him. This was a time when the king of Egypt had, I think he was getting concerned with the amount of the Israelites, the population, and he was thinking if there was an uprising or a conflict with a neighboring nation, that these Israelites would throw their towel in with the other, and so he was concerned just based on population, and so this was his version of a population control. And so, again, you read this story and you really don't think about, floated the baby in the Nile River, but if you've ever done any research to know what kind of things are in the Nile River, it's not necessarily the best place to be going swimming. And so you just think of it, and I just Googled it a little bit, and I was like, hippopotamuses and, the Nile crocodile, and but then there's some fish that have, huge teeth that good and well are not plant eaters. And so you just look at all those factors in there, and you look at, that was incredible faith that Jochebed had to put that child in the water and know that God was taking care of that child. The next one, Sarah, the mother of Isaac, who waited 90 years to be a mom, and Abraham 100, and so when they were finally blessed with that in Genesis 17. Verse 16, God makes that promise to Abraham that he was going to have a son. I mean, you just look at the age thing, and of course, some people would say, oh, they just lived longer back then. Well, in some cases, yes, but in most generally, probably not. And she was past having children. It was just flat and simple. It was, and so to be blessed with that, and each one of these individuals that I talk about here, you just kind of have to think, okay, I wish we had the rest of the story, like Paul Harvey said, where you find out, on a day-to-day basis what the instruction was, the stories around the fire, and what mom and grandma and they instilled in Moses as he was basically rescued by Pharaoh's daughter, and then gotten the opportunity, Jochebed, to nurse that child. So it was, we know that God works in mysterious ways, and definitely blessed that situation. Naomi, the mother-in-law, who shared her faith. In those days, when the judges ruled, there was a famine in the land. So a man from Bethlehem in Judah, together with his wife and 2 sons, went to live for a while in the country of Moab. The man's name was Elimelech. His wife's name was Naomi, and the names of their 2 sons were Mahlon and Chilion. They were Ephrathites from Bethlehem, Judah, and they went to Moab and lived there. Now Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died, and she was left with her 2 sons. They got married to Moabite women named Oprah and the other one Ruth. After they had lived there about 10 years, both the boys, both Mahlon and Chilion, also died, and Naomi was left without 2 sons and her husband. And when Naomi heard Moab that the Lord had come to the aid of his people, providing food for them, she and her daughter-in-laws prepared to return home from there. With her 2 daughter-in-laws, she left the place where she had been living and set out on the road that would take them back to the land of Judah. So the story was, too, that she had basically, you put herself in that situation right there, where not only her husband died, and she had two boys that I'm sure at the time she was like, well, I'm fortunate in the fact that I'll have these boys taking care of me as well, and then to have them pass away also, and now be the matriarch basically, and maybe she felt the obligation to help take care of the daughter-in-laws as well. But anyway, they make the trek, and during that time she releases the daughter-in-laws to go back to their tribe to go, and one did, but Ruth did not. And of course we learned a little bit that Ruth gained in favor of the eyes of Boaz, and he saw in her how she treated her mother-in-law, even though she really probably had no obligation to it anymore at all. And so they're eventually married to Boaz, and then it was Naomi eventually got a grandson, and I guess I don't know how that works, but tribes and family and things like that, I guess they were still, but let's move on to Hannah with Samuel, the mother of Samuel. She had prayed in 1 Samuel 1 verse 11. Hannah prayed to God to give her a son, and in return, after he was weaned, he would give him to the Lord. That to want a child so, because when the child's weaned, I can only guess that it's probably age 1, or something like that. And so to give that child over to somebody else to be raised, it had to be incredible faith to know that being blessed by having that son, and then, like I said, turning him over. most of these moms, we might say, were in no-win situations. Either they were widows, in that situation there, and having to provide in a way that is probably very, very, very hard to do so. Situations where the government wants to kill your child, kind of deal, and having to deal with that. I'm trying to think now what can we take away from these moms, I guess, this morning? In some of this stuff, like I said, we don't know a lot, but you kind of got to put yourself in their position, and you may make some assumptions there a little bit. But the widow, what can we say about the widow this morning? She was obedient. She did what was asked of her. She trusted. Whether or not that was her faith or not, there was something there that would allow the Lord to provide for her. Lois and Eunice, incredible faith. Again, we don't know much about them, but you could say that they were faith, and then the instruction that they give to Timothy as he was growing up allowed him to be the man, the godly man that he turned out to be through his service there. Jochebed, the trust and faith in the Lord that would protect Moses in the Nile River, and that child would grow up to be the leader that he ended up being. Sarah, we learned that patience and trust in the Lord that he would deliver in what he promised. Naomi, against faith and trust, and then the loyalty to Ruth. Ruth's loyalty to Naomi there, and the love that they had. There's no doubt that they were, Ruth just treated her as if she gave birth to her. And Hannah, faith in her, the promise to dedicate Isaac to the Lord at a young age, knowing that at some given time, let's just say a year old, when child's weaned or whatever, to be able to turn that person that you love so dearly over and know that they'll be taken care of. I think if some of y'all were at small groups on Sunday and I threw out a question, I'm going to read some of the things that we were talking about a little bit of there. The question was, what are things that your mother taught or instilled in you as you were growing up? And we had a variety of answers. I'll just read some of these. Make good choices, serve others, faith, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, church attendance, finances and being frugal, being generous with God's blessings, think before you speak, who do you belong to? I thought that was a good one. Give your best, do your best, respect your elders, family, the values of family, design your destiny, confidence, and then did you pray about that? So these were all really good, and I don't necessarily love lecture stuff here, so I'm going to throw it back open. Other ones that maybe come to mind or whatever, that your mom, grandmother, it could be the village mom or whatever instilled in you. Does anybody have any that you want to add to the list, so to speak? Yes.
Study the Bible.
Study the Bible. Okay. Very good. Anybody else? Well, again, thanks for letting me speak this morning. Again, maybe I'll get better at it as I get to do this further. But I guess I want to close a little bit just encouraging all of us. And again, this because it's Mother's Day, we kind of focus on moms, but this falls right in with dads too and male figures. I mean, to instill godly values in your children. Again, I mean, I know a lot of teachers out there, and we can all think back in school, teachers that we liked and teachers we didn't like, so to speak. But you can be an example as a little league coach, as an art teacher. I mean, every teacher out there, then they seem to have a lot more opportunities to influence the younger crowds. Give them hope, because not every child's got a great home life, and so getting the opportunities as these moms or whatever it is to step up and encourage when it needs to be encouraged. That's another thing that I think moms are really good at is kind of being observant and seeing what kids need and things like that in their life. Sometimes they just need encouragement. Sometimes it's just a fist bump. Hey, I'm glad you had a good day today. And maybe just that. And so we just, like I said, encourage everyone to, I don't know, put forth a little more effort. I've had the opportunity, to be blessed in certain situations, and I know my wife as well. Teaching in some different things, but school teachers. I know sometimes it's frustrating, but I mean, I think back on several teachers that I've had growing up that I think very, very fondly of, and I'm glad for their influence. I know this wasn't necessarily set up to be come forward, as we sing kind of deal, but I just ask that you put it on your hearts to take a chance to teach. And it doesn't have to be ultra young. I mean, I'll take some feedback too from time to time. So anyway, I appreciate your willingness to listen to me, and sometimes I get to rambling a little bit, but I appreciate it. And we just asked, if somebody's got something on your heart and you want, we still got, like I said, we don't have the other Rick anymore, but we still got a good Rick and a good Craig, and so they'd be glad to, like I said, pray with you. I mean, and there's some great women too. If some of you women, need the woman there to help. There's some, like I said, great women in this congregation that would be glad to pray with you also. But let's stand and sing as we close this out.
Standing on the promises of Christ.